All right, hello everyone. Welcome to the live today, where we're kicking off Child Advocacy Week. My name is Kirsten Yancey. I am currently a freshman at the University of Louisville, and I last year was a member of the Health Youth Ambassador Program through Kentucky Youth Advocates. So, a little background: throughout this past year, my senior year, was highly involved with Kentucky Youth Advocates. I had the pleasure and opportunity of meeting many, many state legislators and being able to talk to them about what matters with kids. Um, for advocacy purposes, it's important that youth get their own voice. They don't really have their own opportunity or platform or voice to give their own decisions regarding anything regarding their own lives and their own future because they're too young to have any say on it. So it's really important for us to be able to advocate for them. So you can do it publicly by getting on meetings or coming to the Capitol later this week, or you could do something as individual as writing a letter to a member of your Congress, um, which all the emails and like the addresses can be found online. So if you need help with that, I'm pretty sure that there is a way to do that on the kyouth.org. I will say that my personal favorite day to be a part of last year was Child Advocacy Day at the Capitol, which will be this Wednesday. So make sure you go to that. It's a lot of fun, very informative. The rally starts at 10 a.m. Eastern in the rotunda. So make sure you're there in time so you can see all the remarks regarding our state leaders and our very own youth advocates. The important call to action is just make sure you can do anything you can in order to get these kids their voice and just give them the platform that they so rightfully need. Um, I will say that on Child Advocacy Day last year, I had the pleasure of meeting with our Lieutenant Governor, Jacqueline Coleman, for what was the second time. She's an amazing person. She's so genuine, cares so much about everything she stands for. And so it's really refreshing to see someone who cares so deeply for our youth and uses their platform to give them a voice rather than putting her own in front of them. So without further ado, here's our executive director, Terry Brooks, and our lieutenant governor, Jacqueline Coleman, for a quick Q&A.
Hey, great. Thanks so much, Kirsten. First of all, congratulations. She is going to become a mechanical engineer. So she is at the speed school. So that's pretty impressive. The other thing that I suspect the lieutenant governor has heard so many stories about this, but in talking to Kirsten, what impressed me so much was when her family was displaced by the natural disaster in Western Kentucky. She wasn't living at home, but she talked about that just about every day she traveled to her church to volunteer to help the broader community. So we're proud of you. We're honored that you're with us. And I'm so glad that you made such an intelligent selection on your university. So there is no one who KYA values more in terms of a voice for kids in Frankfort than our lieutenant governor. I tease her because I think she's been on more podcasts, Zooms, et cetera, than anyone in history. So welcome back, Lieutenant Governor. You know, we're always so very, very happy to have you here.
Well, thanks for having me, Terry. Kirsten, thank you for that very sweet introduction, and good luck to you and all the accomplishments I know you're going to make in the coming years. And Terry, this is my favorite week of the year. You know that.
I know that. I always tease the Lieutenant Governor because the first time I met her, she was hours from delivering Evelyn. So I always know how old her youngest kid is because she walked up to the mezzanine carefully and perhaps with difficulty that very first year she was in office and just knocked us out with her interaction with the kids. The lieutenant governor is going to be surprised because I always find it a challenge to find a great quote from her mentor and hero, Pat Summitt, famous Lady Vol coach at UT. But I'm not going to do that this year, Lieutenant Governor. Instead, I'm going to do a Brene Brown quote.
That's a good one.
Vulnerability is not weakness. It's our most accurate measure of courage. And I think I speak for all of us to say that we so admired and appreciated your vulnerability around your health challenges. That vulnerability not only lifted a lot of Kentuckians, but it really was a true measure of courage. So while I'm disappointed that Pat didn't talk about that, I assume Renee's okay, and that just fits the moment so well. So we're so happy that you're able to be with us, and we value your voice for kids.
Thank you. Thank you. And if you're going to have to pass over Pat Summit for a quote from anybody, Brene Brown was a good one.
That's good. Okay, that's good. That's good. So I've been told we have about 20 minutes, and so I want to have some focused conversations. The first one, knowing that you're such a thought leader on public schools, unless I have missed it, one of the issues that's going to come out of the General Assembly like a locomotive is around school choice. Now, it's my understanding that what is really being proposed is a constitutional amendment, and the details, quote, will follow. But I'm wondering if you would like to frame sort of that broader issue from your perspective, because regardless of the details, the concept of school choice, specifically tax credits to be used for non-public schools, cuts across details. So do you want to do a little riffing on that? I had a sense you may have an opinion on that topic. I just like took a wild guess.
Your sense is right. Your sense is right. So I'll start at the beginning with Kentucky's Constitution. Kentucky's Constitution requires state government to adequately and equitably fund a system of common schools. And the General Assembly has tried on multiple occasions to pass a bill, and they've overridden the governor's veto for what they call school choice, whether it's vouchers, charter schools, and those types of things. And they haven't been able to get it done because it's unconstitutional. And so at this point, they're turning to attempts to actually change the Constitution, which should be everybody's first red flag, to be able to create this separate system of education. My concern as a mother, as a teacher, is that this system of education will not be available to every student. It will be available to the ones whose parents know to file for tax credits or who apply and do all the extra steps to get them in the door. These schools are not required to admit students with disabilities. These schools are not required to fund the everyday resources that our kids need, like transportation, technology, athletics, any of those types of things, which really creates what I believe would be a very uneven playing field. The purpose of education is to even the playing field. And so when we start to give public dollars for entities like charter schools or whatever they want to call them, that don't have to be transparent and open to the public, we're taking the public's tax dollars and investing them in ways that they'll never know about, and also ways that are not fair to all of our kids. That to me is not the best way to use our tax dollars. The best way to use our tax dollars is to make sure that every single kid in every single desk in every single school across this Commonwealth has access to every opportunity that they need and that they deserve. I don't think a parent should have to take one extra step to have to find the resources that their kids need to meet their child's needs. I think that should be a given, and that's what public education is for. And so instead of going through all this song and dance of charter school amendments and all of tax credits to non-public entities and all those types of things, just fund the schools. Just fund the schools. And that's how you make sure that kids have what they need.
So I'm so old and decrepit that I remember a day when public education was a common ground arena. I actually was principal at a school, and one parent was a guy named David Karam, who led the Democrats in the Senate. And another parent was named Ann Northup, who had a pretty strong Republican voice in the House and became 3rd District Congressperson. What I remember was in those beginning days of Kentucky education reform, they were totally together, joined at the hip. Didn't agree on a lot, but boy, when it came to schools and kids, they were together. That day seems really a long time ago. Can you talk about, from a macro level, what's going on? It seems like this is a national phenomenon where suddenly public education seems to be the place where every hot button social issue gets dumped. So as a student of history, I'm wondering if you wanted to kind of reflect on how do we get to where we are, and are there some things that maybe could still unite us?
Yeah, and that's a great point, Terry. So my dad was actually in the House on the Education Committee when
Era.
there was passed, and all those folks were there. And he often says that their disagreements used to be about the amount of funding to put into X, Y, and Z for public schools. Now the conversation is how much funding to move from public schools to another entity. So that's a scary devolution there for sure. But I think about the ways that we got here, and as you said, the social issues that often find themselves, and that's a good verb, dumped on public education. And I think the reality is that people have realized, so this is a good thing. People have realized that schools are where the future of our economy is, that our teachers are the number one impact factor on young people. And that is good, right? That is good that people are realizing that. The challenge is, how do we reckon with that, right? And again, in my mind, it is making sure that all of those people have everything they need to succeed. Other folks have, in my mind, decided that the answer to that is to be divisive and to divide and conquer, unfortunately. We are only hurting the kids. We're only hurting the kids who need education the most. And it's truly a challenge. I do think the ways that we can, maybe the area that we might be able to find some common ground on, which education is the root of, is workforce development, right? We can all agree that we have to make sure that Kentuckians, young and old, have an opportunity to enter the workforce prepared to make the best living they can for their family, to upskill, to reskill, to continue building on that education. And I think whether we look at it through a private sector perspective of developing a workforce, or whether we look at it through a public education sector of, these kids are our future, we invest in them every day and they deserve the best. We're all together on this outcome, right? It's just how we get there that really has become pretty divisive of late. And there's really no reason it ever should have been.
Yeah, thanks. I want to make sure that we have time for you to dig into budget conundrums and hopes. But maybe a good segue, you mentioned workforce from where we want our kids to go. The other aspect of workforce that I find really compelling is when we look at the kids sector workforce right now. We presented in this year's Kids Count data book essay around the hypothesis that the key issue confronting kids' well-being is the kids sector workforce, whether you're talking about juvenile justice professionals, frontline social workers, early childhood professionals, or the teacher workforce. So, at least from my perspective, you and the governor presented a budget that took a fairly big swing at addressing workforce issues as they affected kids. So I'd like to open our budget discussion by asking you to kind of reflect on the different layers within that proposed budget that could in fact positively impact the workforce when it comes to serving kids.
Absolutely. That's the key, is to making sure that we invest in the areas where folks need it the most, right? And so all of those, as you said, frontline workers for our kids are places that the governor and I have really prioritized over the course of our first term and now beginning our second. when it comes to public education, we'll stay on that for right now since that's where we started. The governor proposed a $1.1 billion budget for public education. And that included everything from creating universal pre-K for the first time ever to providing an 11% raise for all school employees, not just classroom teachers, bus drivers, cooks, custodians, front office workers, all of those folks that are the village that support our kids. We fully funded student transportation. And Terry, I know you're in Louisville, and that was an issue certainly for many reasons in the last school year, but certainly it's really difficult to slash someone's transportation budget significantly and then point your finger at them when the buses don't run on time.
Yep.
I mean, you gotta put your money where your mouth is. If getting kids to and from school is important, then transportation should be fully funded. And by the way, that's a law. It is law that the state fully funds transportation, and they have not done it in decades. So that's a good place to start. When it comes to whether it is, healthcare and making sure that our kids have access to every opportunity there to make sure, because if they're in school and they're not healthy, then obviously that's going to be a barrier to their learning, to creating an even better life for themselves than that, right? Social workers, that investment year after year has been one of the biggest pushes from the governor and myself to make sure that every social worker has the resources they need. We obviously need a significant number more social workers because their caseloads are heavy and the burden of every caseload is heavy. That's a tough job to go into, to carry those challenges from those kids and those families. So those frontline workers for the people who care for our kids, to us, are the most important investments that we can make, because it's not just an investment in today, it's an investment for generations of improvement. I always say, and I said this in my State of the Commonwealth or inauguration speech, that we can invest in kids on the front end, or we will literally pay for it on the back end.
Yeah. And your budget proposal really was cross-sector, because you talked about increasing wages for those folks in juvenile justice, adding social workers, the teacher thing. So I just wanted to emphasize that. One thing you mentioned as part of the milieu of schools is the role of health in school-based health. And I know one of the areas that you especially have been focused on is behavioral and mental health supports for kids. I find it interesting that I believe the last legislative session before you and Governor Beshear took office was 2019, and actually the late Bam Carney and Senator Max Wise put together a really comprehensive approach to building resiliency. It was really got a lot of national attention, bipartisan support. It seems like suddenly behavioral and mental health, trauma-informed care is on the political chopping block again. So I won't even ask you to do the political commentary, but I'd ask you to do the importance, because I know you've talked to kids, you've talked to parents, you've got a lot of data around how important supporting kids' mental health is, along with their obvious physical health.
Right. And those should go hand in hand. And I'll go back to how Kirsten kind of set us up by talking about how important it is to lift up the voice of our students and our young people. So we launched the Student Mental Health Initiative in Kentucky out of the Lieutenant Governor's office. And it was completely developed and implemented by students. They ran the show, they developed the policy recommendations, and then they went and presented those to agencies and to the legislature across the state. And so, the reason that I did that was because I heard a lot of people talking about mental health in our young people, but they weren't talking to young people, nor were they listening to them. And so we collected the data, we did the work to be able to make these policy recommendations that are not just opinions or just, passing thoughts, but really rooted in what our students were experiencing and what they were telling us they needed from us. And so our students were the North Star of that work. And to this day, We have brought in about $40 million to the state of Kentucky for school-based mental health services because of the
Wow.
students. So, and we're not done yet. We're going to keep going. But you know, this is what I always say. I think about my training as a teacher and all of the things that I got, you know, did professional development in or worked on for curriculum and instruction and classroom management. And I didn't have anything. I never learned anything about what do you do when you have foster care kids in your class, which by the way, I had lots. What
Yeah.
do you do with couch surfers, with kids who are hungry, with kids who are clearly struggling with their mental health? That is a component of caring for kids, is for us to be able as educators not to take on that work, because that's not our area of expertise, but to recognize and refer students to get the support that they need.
Yeah, that's great. To wrap up, I want to bookend what Kirsten had challenged folks to do and ask you to affirm it, which is one of my worries is that it's so easy when we read the headlines about toxicity and politics in general, gridlock here, gridlock there. It's so easy for folks to kind of go, so why bother? Well, we think it's so important that people bother, that people show up on Wednesday, that people are reaching out to state senators and representatives and you and the governor. So from where you sit, can you just affirm the importance of voice? That it's so striking to me. I don't want to bury the lead. So this is not a Democratic or Republican deal. We had a recorded session with Senator with Representative Tipton recently, and he was in Senator Higdon. Both of them were like, one or two calls makes a difference for a legislator. You've kind of said the same thing. So affirm Kirsten's opening with your benediction and give us that show up and be counted for kids affirmation.
I absolutely will. You know, Wednesday is a big day. To me, it's the most important day we have in this Capitol because it is us making sure that we are centering kids in the work that we do, which is certainly what we should be doing every day. But this office that I'm sitting in, the Lieutenant Governor's office, the legislative chambers, this entire Capitol belongs to you. We just get to occupy these offices for a moment in time. This building and the work that's done here is for the people of Kentucky. This is your building. You belong here. And I can't think of a better way to use your voice than for kids on Wednesday.
Yeah. Lieutenant Governor, thanks for being here and thanks for being such a persistent and enthusiastic voice for kids. You know, we appreciate you and we're looking forward to seeing you Wednesday. Jamie, send us out.
Thank you again, Kirsten, and thank you, Lieutenant Governor Coleman, for your enthusiasm and insight into Frankfort as we kick off a week of championing youth voices. Also, thank you to our many sponsors. Without your support, we would not be able to hold these amazing events. And you're one of the main reasons we're able to do it, so thank you. So today at noon, please join us back again for a lunch, as we will hear from the KYA's policy team. They'll provide an overview of priorities from the blueprint for Kentucky's children's agenda. And then in addition to today's events, we have an exciting week planned with everything from data and advocacy lunch and learns, legislator perspectives and advocate conversations, advocate networking coffee breaks, and those featuring family Frankfort insiders, people from the family and children's committee chairs, and many others throughout the entire week. Also, and with that, if you're interested in registering for any of those events, virtual events, please go to our website, kyouth.org, to do so. And then, of course, we hope to see everyone in Frankfort on Wednesday for Children's Advocacy Day at the Capitol, just to be able to celebrate youth and young adults across the Commonwealth and to courageously advocate for kids. So thank you for joining. Enjoy the rest of your day and hope to see you a little bit later on.
Thanks.